I got a big question to ask you. Why do you think physical pain and emotional pain are so deeply connected?
They run on the same circuits in the brain. And in the book, I talk about the 3 pain circuits. There's the feeling circuit. You cut your hand. It activates an area of the brain called the thalamus. It's the sensory gateway in the brain, and then it goes to your parietal lobes. They go, oh, I cut my hand. Oh, it hurts. So there's the feeling pathway, which then in vulnerable people, not in everybody, activates the suffering pathway, which is your limbic brain. And if you grew up, for example, with childhood trauma, which you and I've talked about before, well, that's already working hard. And then it triggers the calming pathway. And so if you have a healthy frontal lobe, what can sort of tamp down or break the pain? But if you don't have a healthy frontal lobe, maybe you have ADD, low frontal lobe function. Maybe you hit soccer balls with your forehead or played tackle football, low frontal lobe function. Maybe you had a car accident, often low frontal lobe function. You can't turn the pain off. And people go, no, it's in my back. It's not in my head. Well, it starts in your back, but did you know 80% of people my age, I'm 71, 80% of people my age have abnormal MRIs in their back and no pain at all. It's the fear you feel when you get the abnormal MRI with the arthritis, the slip disc, the crushed disc, whatever, that triggers the suffering pathway. And now all of a sudden, whatever pain you have gets smeared with dread. And then that makes your muscles tense, which then keeps the pain going. And so in the book, the star of this new book is the doom loop. So that's what I discovered. I was constantly getting myself into the doom loop. And there's an acronym called PAIN, right? It's like, so you actually have pain for any reason that activates the suffering pathway, which then increases the ants, the automatic negative thoughts that steal your happiness, and negativity, which then goes to nervous tension. That's where repressed rage hangs out, which then leads to harmful habits, and you just spin on the doom loop. And getting out of the doom loop, well, you have to have a healing loop. It was like pain. I was like, oh, I heard. Well, every day you win or you learn. What's different about today that's yesterday? Oh, I had corn the day before. Corn? Yes, because it's pro-inflammatory and it can increase pain. Or you didn't sleep well. Or somebody really pissed you off, but you didn't say anything because you want to be nice. And then it's ease the suffering pathway, something we can talk about EMDR or havening or saffron or curcumins, or from a medicine standpoint, Cymbalta. Isn't that interesting? It's one of the reasons I wrote the book. SAMe supplement works for both pain and depression. Cymbalta is an antidepressant that is FDA approved for chronic pain. Why? Because they work on the same circuits in the brain. And then you have to develop a positivity bias, muscle relaxation, express your feelings, and then really focus on healthy habits.
I love it. So we're going to deconstruct these acronyms, of course. And it's just fascinating because people who've experienced pain, which is the majority of people listening, chronic pain specifically, we don't talk about the fact that that often leads to emotional pain. And the reverse is true, right? Emotional pain, right? Chronic depression, anxiety, leading to physical symptoms in the body as well. And so we've had a firsthand experience of that interconnected circuitry. You know, I love the analogy you talk about 2 lanes of a highway merging together in the brain with these 2 different paths. And so, but it's very real. You know, the emotional pain is very real. And that physical pain, it can be very dark and difficult for us to manage in our lives. And so to have a solution, change your brain, change your pain, it really puts a spotlight on some agency here, because as you know, just getting stuck in that doom loop is very difficult to break. Can you talk a little bit about what happens? We'll say, you know, somebody does experience an injury, we'll just say a back injury, and their brain and their repetitive thoughts start to go to, this is always going to be my existence. It's so bad. It's so bad. It's so bad.
So I open the book with the story of a police officer, Sam. And Sam had been in 2 high-speed chases, accidents, and he had severe back pain. He had 6 surgeries. He was on opiates. He was drinking too much. He felt like he was a shell of himself. He was irritable with his wife, irritable with the kids. And one day he was done. And he went to his garage, turned on his Jeep in a closed garage, and he was going to end it all. And thank God his wife was a light sleeper, ran to the garage, threw it open, screaming, crying, took him to the hospital. And by random chance, if you believe in random chance, I was on call. And he just looked hollow, and she looked terrified. And my first thought was not to put him on medicine. My first thought was to look at his brain, because that's what I do, right? For the last 34 years, I do a study at Amen Clinics called Brain SPECT Imaging. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. And his brain was not working well. The accidents damaged his frontal lobes, so that calming pathway just wasn't working. Taking the opiates turned off his own internal opiate production module. His suffering pathway was on fire, and especially an area called the anterior, that just means toward the front, cingulate gyrus. And I think of the cingulate as the brain's gear shifter. It lets you go from thought to thought, move from idea to idea, be flexible, go with the flow. Well, his childhood trauma from an alcoholic dad had activated it. The injuries, very traumatic emotionally, made it worse. And he hurt, but he couldn't stop thinking about the hurt. It was like his brain was like an old vinyl record, and it had a scratch in it. And he couldn't get away from it. And giving him supplements to raise serotonin and calm that, along with all the other things I talk about in the book, he did dramatically better. And he said, you know, sometimes I still hurt, but I don't think about it all the time. And then he went on to law school, and now he's a lawyer.
Amazing. It's such a great story. And there's a plethora of these great stories, these success stories. And you also share their brain results as well. And, you know, just keeping this in context as well, in that particular story, I remember his relationships being strained. He started to think about all the things that he couldn't do anymore. And he was more and more isolating and, very snappy with his loved ones. And he just wanted to end it all. He wanted to get out of pain. And this is not unusual, because one of the things that you share in the book, which is so eye-opening, is the landscape of pain in our world today, in our society here in the United States specifically. Can you talk about the landscape of pain? Like, what are some of those statistics look like? Even kids, a certain percentage of children are experiencing
20% of children have chronic pain. And I actually tell the story of Amelie, and made me cry. She's my niece who ended up with something called complex regional pain syndrome after she fractured her ankle playing soccer. But ever since she was little, it was her elbow, it was her knee, it was her wrist. She was always complaining of chronic pain. And her ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, on a scale of 0 to 10, how many bad things happened to you growing up, is a 9, which is why Tan and I ended up adopting her. So 20% of kids, 50 million Americans struggle with chronic pain. And it's devastating. It increases the incidence of divorce, depression, suicide. And they often end up on multiple medications, including opiates. We're still in the middle of this big opiate epidemic because in the late 90s, some of the pharmaceutical companies were very effective at marketing pain. And they said, now pain is the fifth vital sign that, it's not just heart rate and blood pressure and breathing. We want to know, what's your pain? And if you have any pain, you should be out of it. But the problem with taking opiates is they piss off your white blood cells and actually increase inflammation and pain in your brain. And of course, short term, people, benefit from them. But you need to be thinking about how to get off of them, because if you don't, they're going to steal your life.
Yeah. You also talk about the economic impact as well. Like 650 billion is going annually to address pain. Healthcare costs, disability, the list goes on and on.
And then it leads to alcohol consumption, which just devastates families, or it leads to more marijuana consumption, which can be so harmful. We just need a better approach.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the book was kind of setting the tone for why is it the way that it is right now, and we're not really doing well, let alone this epidemic of pain we're experiencing, but the treatment of pain. And you share that the current mindset to treating physical and emotional pain is most healthcare providers are trained to compartmentalize physical and emotional pain, to treat them as separate entities. You are disclosing the fact that they are wired up and connecting in the brain in the same place, and they're treated separately. And so if we're dealing with a physical issue, you go to the physical person, and our conventional treatments, surgery, drugs, maybe some physical therapy might be thrown in there, but it's just attack the physical. And hopefully we get some results if the surgery is successful. But what most people don't know is that, as you talk about in the book, most surgical procedures don't even change as far as like progressive outcomes and things getting better as non-surgical approaches. And so there's
in
a place.
Big studies, they come out about the same as far as effectiveness, but surgery has 21 times the number of side effects. And because of my imaging work, I'm like, general anesthesia is not on the top of the list, right? If I have to have it, I will, and then I will go about repairing my brain, but it can hurt your brain. And now I'm a psychiatrist. Why do I know that? Because I have patients who I have their scan, then they went for general anesthesia, and their scans were significantly worse. And then I went to the literature, and it said children who have general anesthesia have a higher incidence of ADHD and learning problems. Adults who have general anesthesia, especially coronary artery bypass surgery, have a higher incidence of dementia. And so always looking to love and care for my brain, I'm like, what else can I do? And I'm a fan of physical therapy and Pilates. And, sometimes if you need an injection to sort of decrease the inflammation in that part. But I think you got to always think about getting your brain healthy first. And I have a cardiologist who I love, and we're out to dinner. And he said, I'm going to have back surgery. He said, I've had chronic back pain for 4 years. And I'd made the decision. I made the appointment. I said, I have a new book coming out. I said, just read the introduction and then call me and tell me what you think. And he read the whole thing and said he loved the book. And 2 weeks later, his pain was 90% less. He canceled the surgery. Wow. And then a month later, he said, I have no pain. And for him, I think in part, it was repressed rage. And when you repress emotions, they come out, but in other ways, maybe hypertension or back pain or headaches.
Why is that?
Because the energy is going to go somewhere. And so many of us, especially I'm a middle child, I wanted to please. I had a brother that beat me up a lot. I have reasons for rage. But you really couldn't say it because you get hurt. Or you feel guilty about it. In the book, I talk about, in the rage section, ISTDP. It's a form of therapy called intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy. John Sarno in his works often talks about repressed rage. But I didn't think he did a good job of, all right, I see that. What do I do about it? And in this book, there's a lot of what do I do about it? And the theory behind intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy is when you're little, you want to bond because your parents keep you alive. They feed you, they clothe you, they shelter you. But something bad happens, especially people who have higher ACE scores. Something bad happens and you feel pain. You feel rage. But you can't express it. And so you feel guilty about it and you turn it on yourself. So it's rage and then guilt about the rage, which then gets buried. But you hurt and you have anxiety and you're more likely to have an addiction and you're more likely to have stress symptoms. And so the treatment is often getting in touch with the rage, always appropriately. There's a exercise in the book that I love called emotional freedom journaling. I do it with my patients. So however old you are, for every 5 years, 1 page in the journal, and draw a line down the middle of the page. On the left side, what awesome things happened in your life, because I always want people to remember their lives in a balanced way. On the right side, what awful things happened. And write them out with detail. And if you do that, so 71, it's 14 pages, you very clearly get to where the rage is, from being beaten up to being belittled by my dad to being belittled by my colleagues. You can't just be Pollyanna with all of this. In fact, there's a section in the book where I talk about Pollyanna having to make friends with Hannibal Lecter. That at least in your imagination, you have to be able to recognize and imagine or express the rage.
Yeah. Are there any other, what about a physical expression of that rage that's not necessarily directed at another person, which can be pretty terrible, obviously?
I think breaking dishes could be really helpful. Going to rage rooms where you're breaking things or beating things with bataka bats. I think that can be really helpful. Tana, her ACE score is 8. She's had a lot of pain in her life, loved karate. And she goes, I just feel better when I hit things.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. And this is just speaking to, again, there's a lot of tools, many paths to the goal, but just holding that stuff in is toxic to our bodies. And I think it could be very insidious. We don't really know what's happening, especially if it's something from childhood. But today, I think it's easy as well. Even the most kind-hearted and patient among us, sometimes we can be a sounding board or container for a lot of stuff. And maybe we're just well, I'm such a nice person. It's okay if this person is expressing all this anger my way. It's fine. I'm fine. And it can start to build up. You've got to be able to process stuff yourself as well.
Well, I just love the idea of getting anger out, getting repressed emotions to the surface. And so many people that are just so afraid of them. It's oh no, I can't feel that because then I'm not a good person.
Yeah.
So they haven't really worked through. And the origin is often 4, 5, 6. Because emotionally, you believe you're at the center of the universe. So if something good in your family happens, you sort of think it's because of you. And if something bad in your family happens, you think it's sort of because of you. And you end up holding this guilt that had, in fact, nothing to do with you, but you carry it throughout your life, really believing you're a bad person.
So what I'm hearing is that you just said it. A lot of us are afraid of anger, for example, but all of our emotions have value. I think that's why we have them, but I think we can get stuck on some of them, of course. And also sometimes we can put some of our emotions on mute, even though they're valuable for us in our need for expression.
I find, when I get people to be able to express it, perhaps at their mom or one of their siblings, it's always appropriate, but at least in your imagination, be able to be honest with yourself. And the reason the Emotional Freedom Journal is awesome and awful is I don't want you getting stuck on awful, because that's not going to be helpful. I want you to really see your life in a balanced way. I find it so helpful. And I talk about EMDR a lot in the book, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, where you can bring up some of these very powerful negative feelings. You do it with a therapist, but as I have your eyes going back and forth, you bring them up and it just sort of sucks the energy out of them. It's so powerful. And sometimes in EMDR, I'll go, and if the feelings could come out at that person, what would happen? Where would they go? And sometimes in our imagination, people die. And if you've been sexually abused and you were a victim, getting the rage out at that person, at least in your imagination, is critical to healing.
Yeah, it's breaking this doom loop, right? I haven't shared this before. 2020, terrible injury, sciatic pain. It's around the time I saw you at that Santa Monica studio, and I'm just like, it's just on fire, hot, leaning in my chair. And I healed, recovered better than I had ever been. The things that I was able to do. It was a difficult process, but I was training. This is 2020, and as I was training to get well, I had in my mind that I was fighting against the idiocy that was happening in the world at the time and all the infighting. And I was training with this aggression. And I didn't know this at the time, but I was just encoding my cells with this command of anger. And I'm a very, as you know, I'm a very cool person. I'm very laid back, but that was my mindset at the time. And cut to a very difficult year. Right? 2024 to 2025, we'll say. Several close people passing away, changes in our household dynamics with one kid moving out, another kid going to a different school, and just all these moving parts. And that's just some of it. Even a mentor that I met around that time who came and sat in this chair, and when my father passed, this person showed up and said the things that I would have wanted him to say, right? And then he ended up passing away. So it was just like one thing after the other. And it was enough again, I felt like I was handling it all very well. And my wife was very upset during this time with all the changes as well. Her father passed. And as I was, the last kind of straw happened, and I started to have that pain that I had in 2020 without any mechanical damage. And it was difficult. I ended up going to physical therapy and just doing all this stuff again for a psychosomatic issue, but I didn't believe it was psychosomatic, even after getting analyzed, because I couldn't believe. I think
the stress reactivated
exactly
your emotional brain, and it went to a vulnerable area in your body.
Yeah, exactly. And here was the symptom that explicitly affirms what you're talking about. I went for a walk because I was having a hard time even walking. I went for a walk. The most beautiful sunshiny blue sky day that I've ever seen in California. The park was pretty much empty. I'm just walking. And I didn't know anything about this work. And I was just so angry. So much anger was just coming up as I'm taking these steps. And I'm just like, why am I so mad? Like, I have nothing to be mad about. But I didn't realize I was just holding all this stuff in. And so coming across Dr. Sorno's work, for example, and me having this self-inquiry and realizing like, I'm just holding all this stuff in. And after I have that, first of all, just the awareness that that's taking place is a big part of the battle. But just having the audacity for me at the time was just standing up for myself to allow myself to be angry. It's okay to be angry, right? Because it's one of those emotions where I don't really do that. I don't need to get angry. It was okay. I gave myself permission to be angry, to express my anger. And I'm not trying to say it was like overnight, but a 3-month process of dealing with some pain within a matter of a couple of days was gone. And then I got the email from you about this new book. And I'm just like, the synchronicity is crazy. The timing is crazy, because my message for everybody is you will be shocked at how quickly you can get well, or at least have a huge decrease in your pain symptoms, your experience of pain, if you address what's going on with your brain, what's going on with your mind, your thoughts. It all is operating on that same pathway. And last part, I'm going to pass this back to you. You talk about the statistics, right? We've got folks undergoing, it's beautiful that we have the access to surgery and anesthesia, 21-fold increase in subsequent issues post that. We want to have that as an opportunity and possibility, but there's so much that you can do within your own brain and body. And that's what you're really teaching us as well. Like, we've got all these great tools, but we've got to address what's going on. Truly change your brain, change your pain.
Yeah. And if you go to a surgeon, they're going to operate because that's what they do. I want to give people other options. And I want them to just see, is the doom loop part of my life? And if it is, well, let me get out of it. And how do you get out of the doom loop? Well, every day you win or you learn. So with your pain, I'm like, so what makes it better and what makes it worse? And just, I want you to be curious, not furious. Your body was created to heal. And if it's not healing, you have to go, what is in the way of that? Am I eating things? As we talked about aspartame. Am I thinking things? Am I relating in ways that increase my pain? So that's the first part. It's just you win or you learn. And then it's calming that suffering pathway. And I'm a huge fan of omega-3 fatty acids, curcumins, and saffron. And we make something called Happy Saffron, and I've taken it every day for almost 6 years. Saffron, zinc, and curcumins. 28 randomized controlled trials showing it's equally effective to antidepressants. Okay. But rather than mess with your sexual function, it enhances it. And it's been shown to enhance memory. So mood, memory, sex. And it calms. And then there's some new studies. Helps with PMS, helps with fibromyalgia, helps with arthritis. I'm like, okay. But it's however you want to do it. Calm this suffering pathway. And then you have to discipline your mind, because the ants drive pain. And every time you have a thought, every cell in your body responds to that thought. Every single cell. I do a lot of biofeedback in my practice. And early in my career, I would develop a word association test. And so I'd hook up your hand temperature, how much your hands sweat, your muscle tension, heart rate variability, and breathing rate. And then I'd just say all these words, and I just watch how your physiology responded. So for me, if I say mother, and mother is a good concept for me, my hands get warmer almost immediately. They get drier. My muscles react. My heart rate variability goes up, which is a sign of heart health. And my breathing rate goes down and becomes deeper. Those are all sort of parasympathetic or positive ways. Now, if you say father, my hands get colder, they start to sweat, my muscles get dense, my heart rate variability goes down, and my breathing gets fast and shallow. And so if you're thinking a lot of negative things, and if we just think of last year for you, when you have a lot of stress, your cells are stressed with that. And so during the pandemic, COVID, all by itself, the virus, activates the suffering pathway in the brain. So we've seen increases in depression, but also increases in chronic pain. So we need to calm that down. Now, meditation will do it. Something called havening will do it, which is sort of self-EMDR. It's bilateral hemisphere stimulation. It's very interesting. I talk about it in the book.
Can we go through the RELIEF acronym?
So I'm sort of doing it. So relief is recognize the pain and really start thinking about the triggers. E is ease the suffering pathway. L is let go of negativity and negative thoughts. And there's a whole section in the book on positivity bias training, because I don't ever want you to believe everything you think. Your brain in so many ways is like a receiver, and you get thoughts you don't need. You get thoughts that are crazy. You get thoughts that are stupid. You get thoughts that, can I give you an example of one? I had one recently. We have two shepherds. And the reason we have two shepherds is the German shepherd loves Tana and is completely ambivalent about me. She comes home, he's like a wacko. The energy of love is so, he can't stand it. And I come home and it's, hey, dude. And that's it. And I'm like, no, I'm the second son in a Lebanese family. No, I want to be first with something. And so I have this beautiful white shepherd, and I'm completely in love with her, and she loves me back. But anyways, recently, Terrace, that's the German shepherd, came into my office. So whenever Tana's not there, he does love me, and he comes and hangs out with me. And I just got this thought that if I murdered Tana, that he would get really excited when I came home. But it's just, I'm obviously not going to murder Tana. And I realize if somebody murders her, they're going to look at me first. But it's just a random, stupid thought that I don't have to attach to. So many of my patients, they get a bad thought and they think they're a bad person. And it's like, no, it's just sort of randomness that, you know, it's the news you watch or the music you listen to or the voices, perhaps even of your ancestors. I'm a huge believer in generational trauma. And
it's in the data. It's in the data. It's there.
So you don't have to believe every stupid thing you think. Take each thought captive. Or I'm working on this new program called the Amen Whole 4 for faith organizations. I'm so excited about it. And it's based on Romans 12:1 and 2. And Romans 12:2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And Christians know that verse, but they don't know the second part of the verse. Then you will be able to test what is God's good, pleasing, and perfect will. Does this thought, I'm not enough, fit God's good, perfect, and pleasing will? Absolutely not. And so it's just really not attaching to the nonsense, to the noise in your head. And then it's training positivity. So we're going to have anger and positivity in the same relief loop, but today is going to be a great day. what went well today, looking for the little micro miracles of the day. So that's the let go, the L in relief. The I is initiate relaxation. So important. Early in my career, I don't know if we've talked about this much. I took a month elective as a medical student in hypnosis, and I love it. I find it so helpful, and it's masterful to get the rage out. So initially, you do hypnosis for relaxation, especially progressive muscle relaxation, guided imagery. I think it's so critical for anybody who struggles with chronic pain because tension makes it worse. But I have an exercise, and I do it for almost all of my patients with pain because they all have repressed emotions, is put them in a trance, go into a forest, see a clearing, and in the clearing, there's a big tree stump. And on that stump are pictures of all the things that have made you furious, made you sad, made you mad, give you grief. All the zombies. Zombies are the things from the past that still haunt you, that wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And now I want you to get an axe. And I want you to cut up all the pictures. And I want you to take your time. And I want you to do it until you can't do it anymore. And I just stay with them in that moment. And then just sit down and imagine a breeze come up. It's all dust now. Blow it away. And then go back into the park. And it's a beautiful exercise, and people feel freer afterwards. You just need a mechanism to get it out. And then engage in brain healthy habits. If it's your brain that's feeling it and your brain's inflamed, well, guess what? You're going to feel it much more. And so, kill the alcohol, get rid of the marijuana, take your supplements, eat right, go to bed. Sleep deprivation turns off 700 health-promoting genes. And then the F is my favorite. I have a brand new study that we're working on hope. That hope is tomorrow can be better, and I have a role in it. And that's what I love about Change Your Brain, Change Your Pain. It's a book of hope because it actually gives you agency on, it's not just me and the orthopedic surgeon. It's me and my brain. It's me and my diet. It's me and my thoughts. And so our study on hope, which is so interesting, high negativity, low frontal lobe function. Low hope, low frontal lobe function, especially in an area of the brain called the insular cortex. That's an area of the brain that's right between your frontal and temporal lobes, but dramatically low with low hope. Pretty interesting. And low hope if you're not happy. And so always protecting your brain function is just critical. And then, what's the goal? And give yourself 4 paths to the goal. Too often people go, okay, here's the goal, and it's surgery. And it's like, I'm not sure I'd do that. I would have options, right? I always do better if I have options.
There's a quote that you have in the book that I love. It's from Helen Keller, and it says, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it. What does that statement mean to you?
That you are not stuck, that it's agency, is that I can make things better, that I have a role. And, I've looked at all these scans over the last 34 years, and my favorite thing is making them better. It's like, even if you've been bad to your brain, you can make it better, and I can prove it.
Yeah. Can you share, obviously there's a ton of tools in the book, but the power of breathing in relationship to pain.
So when you hurt, your breathing becomes faster. It becomes more shallow, which then perpetuates the pain, because then that breathing pattern increases anxiety and increases tension. And I teach people the 15-second breath, and it's so effective. It's 4 seconds in, take a big breath, hold it for a second and a half, 8 seconds out, hold it for a second and a half. Takes about 15 seconds. Breathe mostly with your belly. So for a lot of our patients, just have them lay on the floor, put a book on their belly. And when you breathe in, make the book go up. And when you breathe out, make it go down. So it's called diaphragmatic breathing, because you're actually breathing with your diaphragm, this big bell-shaped muscle between your lung, chest cavity and your abdominal cavity. So effective. If you ever watch a baby breathe or a puppy breathe, they breathe almost exclusively with their bellies. But with the stress of life and with pain, all of a sudden we stop moving our belly at all, and it's all up here, and it's less efficient. So actually every morning, I put my legs up on a box, lay on my back, and I do diaphragmatic breathing. And right away it increases this thing called heart rate variability, which is a sign of relaxation and heart health. It's so simple, and it can be very helpful.
Amazing. Amazing. You're amazing, as you know. And this book is very special for me in particular. And this is part of my mission, is to help people to get out of pain and to know that they have options, because pain can be very isolating, as you know, and you could feel like you're the one suffering and the world is kind of going on without you, when in reality, there are a lot of people who are at the pain party along with you, and we're looking for solutions. And a big part of these solutions is each other. And you talk about all these different pieces, of course, and the social connection. Pain tends to isolate us. And we really need each other more than ever. And we need you more than ever. And having you here at this time in human history, I don't think is an accident whatsoever. And I just appreciate you so much. Can you let everybody know where they can get a copy of Change Your Brain, Change Your Pain?
Well, actually, if they pre-order the book or order it the first week or two it's out, we have special gifts for them. If they go to changeyourbrain.com, we have a 30-day online course that I teach, 5 to 7 minutes a day, just the major principles in the book. We have the Emotional Freedom Journal for them. We also have brain curcumins, which is one of the supplements from BrainMD that helps calm down the suffering circuit. So I'm very excited.
So people get that as well?
So people get that. We ship it to them. There's no shipping cost.
That's nice.
For free. So it's really a great value. If they pre-order the book, go to changeyourbrain.com.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
I love you, my friend. Thank you. So great to see you again.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
There is now evidence in humans that the larger the leg muscle, the bigger the brain. And this fascinates me, right? Because we've always had an understanding that strength and muscle mass correlates to a longer life,